Hi, Angie Taylor here, and in this tutorial we're going to have a look at the pencil tool. And we have penciltoolstart.ai open here, and you can find that in the drawing folder. Now you select the pencil tool by going over here to the tool panel, and you can select it just by clicking on this button here, or you can hit the N key. Now the N is not the most intuitive keyboard shortcut for the pencil tool, which begins with a P, but if you think pen with emphasis on the N, tool, then you'll remember it. Now, chances are next time you think about the keyboard shortcut, you'll hear me saying pencil tool, and that'll be enough to remind you. So there, we have the pencil tool selected, and you'll see here I'm in my layers panel. If that's not open already, just click on this button here. If you're in the Essentials workspace, you should see the layer panel button down here in the toolbar over here, the panels bar. If you don't see that, you can go to the window menu, of course, and choose Layers, or hit F7 to open the Layers panel. And here I've got a template layer, and above that I have a line work layer that we're going to draw on. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is just move over here and show you basically how the pencil tool works. It's not like the pen tool. You don't create points and Illustrator draws a line between the points. You just draw the line, and Illustrator decides where the points go depending on how you draw it. And then we could come over here and draw another line. It's all working quite nicely, and you'll see that Illustrator adds as many points as it thinks it needs to create the curves. Now the only thing is, if I then decide to come down here and create a new line, I draw it and all's going well until I release the mouse button, and you'll see it joins those two paths together. So what's going on there? Well, if we double click the pencil tool, that will open up the pencil tool options. We'll have a look at fidelity and smoothness in a second, but what we want to do is have a look down here. Now you'll notice that we have Edit Selected Paths on, and when that happens, if a path is selected, like this, and I draw close to that path, it will just attempt to redraw it. And it's quite good. It's supposed to be to enable you to be a little bit more accurate when you're drawing. If you just want to kind of draw something, keep drawing it until you're happy with it. That's quite a nice little technique. But if you don't want it to keep doing that, you could take that off. Now the only thing about that is if I remove it completely, now when I draw a new line, it just draws lots of new lines. So I've lost the option to redraw the path. So there's one other option, which is to go back in here, leave Edit Selected Paths on, so that when a path is selected and you redraw it within 12 pixels, it will redraw it. But you can turn off the option for keeping the path selected as soon as it's being drawn. And watch what happens if I do that. If I do that, and I click down here and create another path, notice it's not selected, so I can easily go down here and create all the other paths using my pencil tool that I need to create. And they're all individual paths. What if I make a mistake like that and I want to redraw it? Well, it's easy. All I need to do is toggle quickly to the selection tool and select the path. And I can do that by holding down the Command key and clicking on the path. And of course on Windows, that would be the Control key. And when the path's selected, I just click close to it to redraw it, deselect it by holding down the Command key and clicking again, and then continuing on my merry way. Now a couple of other little things about the pencil tool. If you want to create a closed shape like this, you can do, but what you need to do is, as you start drawing, and you decide you want to close the path, hold down the Option key, or Alt key on Windows, and you'll notice that a little circle appears beside the pencil tool, and that indicates that when I release the mouse, or the pen in my case, you'll notice it closes that path. Now you'll notice that it's smoothed out that movement a little bit. If I just draw a path up here, just to show you that a little bit more clearly, if I draw a really wobbly path like that, notice how it smooths it out slightly, and that's due to these settings here in the pencil tool options. We have fidelity and smoothness. Fidelity decides how many points will be used to create the path that you're drawing. So if you tend to bring it down to a low value, you tend to get lots of nice sharp corners. If you put it up to a high value, it tends to use more curves to create the path. You'll see it's a lot simpler. And that's basically because it's using less points. You'll see this one has got lots and lots of points on it, so we're getting more detail. This one's using less points, so we're getting less detail. There are also other options in there for smoothness. So if we bring the fidelity back down to its default setting, but put the smoothness up to 100%, then I can draw quite a detailed path, but it's going to smooth out some of the motion for me that I've made with my pen, giving me plenty of detail, lots of points on the path, but a nice smooth line. Now, you can smooth the path as you're drawing it, or you can smooth it afterwards, so we'll have a look at those options again later. Now, one other thing to show you about drawing with the pencil tool before we have a look at what you can do with these lines after you've drawn them, and that's how to join multiple paths. So if we go back to the pencil tool and I draw a couple of lines, let's draw, well, where do we want to join lines? Well, I'm just going to draw some up here. So I'm going to draw a line there on the hair, and then I'm going to draw a line there on the hair. And then I've decided actually I want to join those together. How do I do that? Well, again, I toggle to the selection tool, holding down the Command key or Control key on Windows. I select both of the paths, and then what I do is I start to draw from the last point of the first path. And then if I hold down the Command key, I get this merge symbol, which allows me to merge those two lines together. And I now have one continuous line. So that's how you can join these paths together. Now, I love the pencil tool. I think it's great. But one of the limitations is you've got these kind of standard strokes of defaults to a 1-point stroke. Now, you can change that. We could go up to maybe 3 points. And if we don't want this kind of continuous width of stroke, let me zoom in by hitting Command plus on the keyboard, Control plus on PC. I can choose a variable width profile for the stroke. So instead of having a uniform weight, I could decide I want it thinner at each end and fatter in the middle. And you'll see I get a really nice effect from that. If I just deselect that, you'll see it starts off very fine, gets fatter in the middle, and thinner towards the end. And there are lots of different weight profiles that you can apply to your brushes or your pens using this menu here. Now, the only thing about that is you might decide, okay, well, what about if I want all of my strokes to have that nice tapering kind of effect? The only thing is, once I start drawing again, you'll notice it defaults back to my standard stroke width. So this is the only frustrating thing. You have to draw your lines, if you like, then select them afterwards, and then decide on the weight and all the other properties. So if we select them, just put the weight up to about 5 and choose a variable width profile, you'll see it updates them all. But if I go back to my pencil tool with these settings selected and draw again, it just goes back to the default settings. Now, there are other tools that will keep these settings, and we'll have a look at those later. But that's a little run through of the pencil tool and how you can use it to draw these nice fluid vector lines with your Wacom pen and tablet. Of course, you can use the pencil tool with your mouse, but it's going to be a little bit difficult to manipulate the mouse as fluidly as you can a Wacom pen and tablet.